This typewriter broke. So this is the Minneapolis-St. Paul battleship. It was just commissioned last weekend. And seemed to go well with the 10 little soldiers. I think everybody on that ship was ashore having a little fun before going down to Florida, I guess. Now what this has to do with typewriters is kind of mysterious to me even. But I had the music, I had the ship, and I was like, well, it's all coming together on an Erika 5 from 1943, brought home by a soldier who was stationed in Germany and brought home this Erika 5 that had a Czech keyboard. So it's a very unusual unit. And combining that, since it's Czech, some poetry of Vaclav Havel. So this is going to be an interesting little diversion today. You're only seeing the reflection. It's a sunny day out here. There we go. So the problem wasn't in the segment so much as in these linkages here. This is where it was all gummed up on either side and now is working fine. And then sometimes I get confused because this goes but the carriage doesn't go because those are for above letters. So if you have a P and you want something like that, get those kind of marks that don't have the carriage move, and then you can put your letter underneath it, kind of like the umlauts and stuff. But this also has like an O with the umlaut on it already. Has these already made. But this these sorts of things are possible. Since they use that a lot. And then with a close-up here, we can see that the numerals are uppercase, which makes it a little bit less convenient, you might say. But very interesting legal mark there in the uppercase. So this was broke, but just temporarily. I thought it was an issue with the segment, but it's these linkages here that needed to be cleaned out. And otherwise, I think it's working pretty well. We'll do a type test. There we go. I think that's all the special characters. So, it's not too bad. Alignment's good. Imprint's pretty good. So, I guess now that I loosened up these keys, it's working rather well, and it's a snappy typer, and you know, they just are very it's just a very beautiful machine. What's not to like? Now, as I put the typewriter down, I realized I moved the camera and it focused on my cat, Oliver. And so, by serendipity, I'm going to just slow things down to let you take that in a little bit and talk about Czech writers. Well, actually, writers and their typewriters on the classic typewriter page lists Bertolt Brecht, German playwright, as one who used an Erika. And I have a volume of Brecht's poetry, but I don't like it at all. And it's maybe the translation. You know, when you're dealing with translations, you never know what's going on. So I'm not wild about that. And I ran into Vaclav Havel's writing. He did not write a lot of poetry, and not much of it is in translation. But I did find one poem. So I think that would be worth going through. And the connection to typewriters for him is he was part of dissident movements and underground publications, and those depended on typewriters back in the day. That's how they would get the word out about the real news that they were trying to cover. The little owl who brayed. Wisdom's little owl brayed. How beautiful is rot's decay. A pine grove bleated low. Come on, easy does it now. A serpent hissed. I love graveyard's bliss. A flower extolled. Where ambitions pit your soul? Pines gushed. Wise up. Flowers hissed. Let it stink. You should never, it's true, calls motherland insistent. In twilight's advancing gloom be the least resistant. Pines shot. Reason rots. Flowers shrieked, beauty reeks. Serpent hooted, the graveyard is paradise, so tranquil and muted. You should never, I cry, in our nation's interest, beneath twilight's grimace, ever have to resist. Dig in, resist, persist. The videos show a refurbished case for the Erika. And I'll return to the notion of Czech poetry. There was an exhibit in 2009 that featured some poets, underground poets. And the curator of the exhibit explained about the Czech Samizdat. He says, through the medium of what is known as Samizdat, that is a term of Russian origin meaning samostatelnaya izdatelstvo, something like elf publishing house. The publishing method was simply typing. The books were typed and then passed from hand to hand to other people. All this was, of course, a clandestine activity, and there were many occasions when people were prosecuted solely on the grounds of typing and distributing the samizdat, these sorts of books. It's interesting to note that in his years as president of the Czech Republic, Vaclav Havel was instrumental in dismantling the Warsaw Pact that used to stand in opposition to NATO. And he said it was a difficult dismantling because the Soviet Union had integrated so many things into that arrangement. And so here we are now. And I will end with a visual poem that Vaclav Havel did. He played around with poems on a page. And it's rather a fun way to end a sometimes unhappy story. Being imprisoned by your government, but then ending up being president.
There were 10 little soldiers on a 10-day leave. All of the crown of Genevieve. Each little soldier led the other to believe that he was going home to spend his 10-day leave. Some took a taxi cab, some took a train. Some bought a ticket for the westbound plane. Some took a trolley to the west side of town. The 10 little soldiers were homeward bound. Each took a different direction, each one in search of affection. Imagine their surprise and the shock they received when they bumped into each other calling home Genevieve. The 10 little soldiers went from bad to worse. 10 little sailor boys, they got there first. They crowded the door like a pack of sardines. One out walked Genevieve.